It is time.
Shark's in order. Our shark.
There's a sharknado coming.
Dragon sharks?
Are those sharks with laser beams attached to their heads?
Welcome to the Real Sharks.
Welcome to episode 18, all my real sharks. And let me just say,
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears!
for this is going to be Movies of Antiquity. Alright guys, so welcome to episode 18. Today we thought we'd talk about some of the greatest films of antiquity that Real Sharks finds to be the best. We're going to be going through all the ancient Greek, Roman, and mythology films on the Real Sharks podcast. I hate to say this, and I know we talk about this a lot, but what makes a good film of antiquity? And for those who don't know exactly what antiquity is, we're talking about those Greek movies like Jason and the Argonauts, Spartacus, Immortals. Yeah. That's one of the newer ones. But I'm going to kick it off today with one of my favorite ones is Jason and the Argonauts, 1963. One of the, I mean, this is one of the greatest ones of all time. Yeah. So Jason, along with Hercules, go in search of the Golden Fleece. And, it's, I would say this is a story comparable to the Odyssey. If people have never heard the story of the Odyssey, then turn off this episode right now because you've never heard of a good antiquity story. I love Jason and the Argonauts. I mean, special effects for the time, very practical, very good, but it was a revolutionary movie. It's kind of under the radar as well, but I love Jason and the Argonauts. Good adventure flick. I mean, it has everything in it, from adventure, you have the Greek aspect, the Greek mythology aspect to it. Just, some good, powerful actors in the film at the time. I'm going to go off and say right now I love that film. I'm going to give that film a good 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I saw it, and, it's such a great movie. Definitely loved it. And, I'm actually going to go higher than you, 8.0.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah, Jason and the Argonauts, one of the greater movies of that century, from the 1960s, really just for that golden era of films, because it was the personification of how can they do a period piece and would it work. For the time.
Well, it's more like a mythology piece, you know.
Kind of,
what I mean?
yeah. You could kind of still say it's period piece because it had to deal with a certain period of time. It's based on some facts. And you believed it, right? What you asked, what makes a good antiquity movie, and this is kind of one that is pretty good, right? It's a tale of just might and strong will. And it's good. It's just really, really good. It paced well. Not so much now. I can kind of get what you mean, right? Like sometimes there's some points where
of course
you're
it hasn't aged well. I'm surprised it's never been remade.
True. Yeah, and that's another one where it's like, oh, please don't. Let's not talk about that now before someone hears you.
Before Disney hears you.
Right?
But it's great. It's one of the greater ones. I would probably give it an 8.5 just because of the time of where it was.
Alright, here's one I want to get to, and I'm going to mention it now, and some people are going to say, oh, why is that even on your guys' list? And I'm going to give you a good reason, and I'm going to hear some clapback, but I'm going to mention it now, and that's, and we're going to go in and out of some of these movies. We're not just going to go in order, so we're going to go from old school to new school. Alexander, 2004. Now, this movie is absolutely god-awful. However, in the story of Alexander, according to historical fact, the props, the settings, everything else about it besides the acting of this movie is brilliant. It's one of those films I want to like really, really, really bad. It has some of the most brilliant scenes in movies, some of the best action scenes, fighting scenes you've ever seen. Of course, it's the story of Alexander the Great and his conquest of the Persian Empire all the way up into his death. Emphasizes a lot of the love story between Alexander and his, boyfriend and his relationship to his mom. Now, that is one criticism I do have of the film. The other criticism I have of the film is there's a lot of dialogue in it that's unnecessary. But overall, though, Alexander, is actually a really good movie, disregarding the acting. I'm going to actually give Alexander a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's if you give it to for props and stand-in alone, like the costumes are pretty good. But again, I have to knock it a little lower than that because the acting what makes the characters.
It's pretty bad.
And it's really bad. Like, and it's not even just bad for just film. It's bad for an movie based on antiquity.
It's not bad on a film. I will disagree with you there because it's very close to the historical record.
But it's bad though. It's like the acting again.
Yes, the acting is
bad. That's what makes it like not even worth looking at. I'd give it a 5 again, only due to the fact that the acting was so atrocious that you didn't even want to watch the film, even though the costumes for the 2004 they went all out for it. The budget was high.
Oh yeah.
But again, it's like when you can't produce
Oliver Stone. And let's not forget
Jolie,
Val Kilmer.
This is at the height of Colin Farrell's career, by the way. This movie was one of the ones that knocked him down when people called him trash because of this film. So. And
I agree, it is. And I'm not gonna knock it for his accent. I'm not gonna knock it because he's not actually from Greek. No, you can't. You can't knock a guy you can't knock Spartacus down because the guy's American.
Right.
I mean, playing a Greek. I knock it down because of how bad his acting is. I mean, just that scene of when his soldiers mutiny. Oh my God! When he's like, "How dare you call me a traitor?" and like grabs their faces and cries. I mean, oh my God, it's bad.
Over the top.
Yeah, way too over the top. But we're spending too much time on Alexander. But okay, go ahead.
No, I hate to disagree with you, Steve. I do recommend this movie to people, but I give them a warning. I tell them how bad the acting is. But historically wise, it's almost accurate. Honestly, I have to give this a 6. How bad the acting was, how over the top some scenes are. I mean, really?
It was a movie.
All right, here's another one we gotta get to, and I love this one. This is one of the greatest ones up there. Clash of the Titans, 1981. Perseus, Harry Hamlin. He's the son of the Greek god Zeus. Basically gets casted out and basically has to, reclaim his glory. Has to, show who's the man. Basically, I mean that's the simple story of Clash of the Titans. I mean, realistically, great film, great story, action-packed, epic. The special effects changed movies. The skeleton scenes, that is used in so many films as just a pop culture reference. And that movie is incredible. There's so many good scenes.
Release the Kraken.
Some of the most memorable lines in that film. And they try to remake it, and we're gonna go ahead and wrap both of them in there. So first of all, I'm gonna rate the original Clash of the Titans as a 9 out of 10. I think it's fantastic.
That's a high rating.
Oh yeah, I think it's one of the best films of antiquity. I think the whole movie is great. It transcended films with the cinematography, with the pacing, with the acting. Everything about it is amazing. Then they try to remake it in 2010, which I will automatically tell you right now, I give it a 2 out of 10. Yeah, I rate that movie that bad. The only reason I give it a 2 is because I really enjoy Liam Neeson and the special effects. Everything else about the 2010 one was trash. I'm sorry. Belongs in the chum bucket, guys. Belongs in the chum bucket.
His glowing armor.
And you know what? This one will probably be a chum bucket episode eventually. But man, Sam Worthington in this movie,
so bad,
terrible. Let me tell you what was really bad about this. The movie itself, like a lot of people go, why is Clash of the Titans kind of almost loosely like Clash of the Titans? Well, because Sam Worthington was one of the reasons. He actually refused to work with the mechanical owl. That's why in the movie when he grabbed that owl and he was like, "Oh, what is this?" That was like his little joke about, "Oh, I'm not gonna work with this owl." And it made me laugh because it's like you, the guy who spent a movie as a blue person, a blue Smurf person, is really telling the directors, hey, this classical movie that everyone loves and hates, I think this whole big part, this little trope here is trash. This little prop is trash. I don't want to do it. Yeah, you
also
said that?
Also the guy that played a Terminator, trying to be a human.
God.
God. Clash of the Titans, it's one of the greatest movies of all time. Just like you said, it changed films. It was one of those films, again, that was an action film, that was in a genre, that was dead. It was no one was looking for a film based in antiquity. Clash of Titans comes out. and it was just so badass. The going back to it again, the mechanical owl. Yeah, it was when I first saw it again, because I've seen this film like over 10 times. I thought it was cheesy, but it's one of those things where you have to watch the whole film. And here's the reason why the film is great. To anybody that has never seen it, the gods are perceived as these immortal, untouchable.
Thank you, Steve. I'm so glad you touched on that point.
Oh my God, we
that.
have to praise it. And they actually get into the like Semitics of the politics of praising the gods and whether they even care. And that's the reason why I hate Clash of the Titans, the remake, because they did such a poor job about it. But in Clash of the Titans, the 1981 version, the original, was so good about it because it just basically touched bases and it lets you as the audience question that fact. You're like, oh, Zeus isn't as good? I thought he was supposed to be, this great guy. Like, no, Zeus is kind of...
That's a great point. Some of the differences between those old classical antiquity movies compared to some of the new ones is they actually depict the gods as having feelings, as having their own personal politics. All right, but and I actually think that makes a film a lot more enjoyable, and makes it more authentic because a lot of the original stories, the gods are involved. They do talk about the feelings of the gods.
Yeah, I love the original Clash of the Titans. I saw that movie as a kid. I loved it. Harry Hamlin was amazing in that movie. The things I loved about it so much is what you actually brought up, like when they're in the temple and you see Andromeda's head fall off, and then you see badass. Her talk. I mean, that was amazing special effects at that times too. I mean, even
now, you're like, oh my
everything.
God.
Yeah, I watched it again last night, and I saw, man, they really pushed CGI at that realm there. And the only reason, 3 reasons why I kind of like the remake is because of Ralph Fiennes as Hades, Liam Neeson, and Mads Mikkelsen. Only 3 reasons, because those actors are so fantastic, and they carried that movie all the way through.
All right, here's another one I think that gets a bad rap, and I'm gonna actually rate it up there really high. You guys might be surprised on this one. I actually give it an 8.5, and that's 2004's Troy, starring Brad Pitt. I love this film, and let me first say too, I actually love the director's cut. If you've never seen the director's cut, it is a lot different than the theatrical version. Now, before I get too ahead of myself, let me mention Orlando Bloom, Brendan Gleeson, Diane Kruger, Brian Cox, Sean Bean as Odysseus, and of course Brad Pitt as Achilles, man. Brad Pitt as the Achilles. And for those people who have never seen Troy, it is actually really good. Now, again, I am only talking about the director's cut. You have to see the director's cut. There is more in the director's cut. There's a lot more violence. There's a lot more blood. It plays to the actual story a lot. It doesn't show the gods as in the original story of the Iliad. I first saw the director's cut, and someone was like, yeah, I mean, do you recommend Troy? I was like, yeah, but don't let your kids see that part with the sacking of the city, because they're throwing people off balconies and hanging them. They're raping the women, and if you're going, whoa, that wasn't theatrical, exactly. The director's cut is way more authentic and way more true to the story of Troy. When I first saw the theatrical, I did not like it. Some funny, awesome aspects of that movie too is they actually had to film it in Mexico due to a problem with a hurricane at the time.
Interesting.
I love this movie, especially the director cut. I have that on DVD as well, and like how Rob was saying, if you're watching theatrical, you gotta watch the director's cut. My favorite guys that were in this movie, Brandon Gleeson and Sean Bean, at their roles were just fantastic. I love Brad Pitt in this movie. I mean, he did a great job. Like, if you didn't know anything about history, you would really want to cheer on for Achilles and just how the way he dies.
That's the only part, though, that is not depicted too accurately, because as much as I do like it, they do paint Brad Pitt's character as a little more likable, because the actual Achilles was a huge dick. I mean, he actually, when he killed Hector, yeah, that's an understatement. Yeah. When he killed Hector, he actually strapped him to the chariot and rode around the city of Troy like a couple nights and days saying, I killed Hector! I killed Hector! So, yeah, by the way, Real Sharks, we love history, and we're pretty good at history, too, if you haven't guessed it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, Troy, this is the love-hate relationship I have with this film, and it's just based off of my mood. I'm not going to say it's a terrible movie, even though I've said that numerous times in the past. Just based on historical presence alone, I would give this movie a nod. It is definitely worth going to see. If you want to go see something that's based in ancient Rome, and you're like, okay...
You mean ancient Greece?
Yeah, ancient Greece, excuse me. If you really want to see that, and you're like, am I going to get the presence that I want? Yes and no, because the battle sequences, here's the only problem I have with it: super duper early CGI, and you're like, yep, that's CGI. I can tell that's some CGI going on.
I disagree. I think it has one great prop effect.
You see, that's the thing where it's like some people will agree, some people will disagree.
I think the retelling too of like how Achilles died is amazing too.
That's a high point about the movie, because again, this is movie, and you have to kind of have some type of movie ending. But yeah, the acting wasn't bad. That's what I mean. Like, these are A-list actors in a piece like this that actually worked. And it's just funny. I like how Odysseus was played by Sean Bean, the guy who dies in like everything.
Yeah.
He was played. I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, this is a fantastic movie. I'm gonna give this a solid 7.
I give this 8.5.
And yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9. All right, all my real sharks.
Ready your breakfast and eat hearty. But tonight, we dine in hell!
And welcome back to Movies of Antiquity on the Real Sharks podcast. Okay, here's one I'm actually going to give a pretty low rating. Actually, I'm going to give it a 4 actually, and that is The Eagle 2011, starring Channing Tatum and Jamie Bell. I gotta tell you, I really despise this film. Now, it's not just because I don't like Channing Tatum. Don't get me wrong, and believe me, this host doesn't. I just don't think, I just think it's unfair that Kevin Costner has all those Razzies and people say he's a terrible actor, but it's like Channing Tatum's not right next to him? Okay. Anyway. The Eagle, though, The Eagle had potential. However, I don't know what they were trying to get away with, or if they just kind of wrote it as in, we got this really, really cool action scene in the beginning, of when the guy shows up, he takes command, and all of a sudden, all these Britons are going to come out and just storm the whole camp and try to kill us and everything. It's going to be this awesome action scene, and then we're going to totally change the pace of the story. And then it's going to be about retrieving the lost eagle, which ended up basically turning into a Lord of the Rings-ish kind of film. And I got to tell you, it was god-awful. I think it's a terrible, terrible, terrible film. One I do not recommend, not as a film of antiquity, or just an overall in general film. It's pretty bad. So that's The Eagle.
100% agree. This is one of those films where it's just so, you're going to go to sleep because it's so boring. When they start going after the quest for the eagle, you're just like, hurry up. And that's not what you want to hear out of a film, especially like this. You're just like, who cares? The costumes in some areas are okay, I guess.
Oh, no. I mean,
right.
The props are good.
They're okay.
The chariot scenes,
yeah,
with the Britons and stuff. The Britons look like Britons. I mean, it does look good. They got the war paint on and everything. It looks good.
It looks good. But
it's a good film.
Did you care about it, though?
No. After the part where they start searching for the eagle, I'm like, who cares?
You're just like, okay, whatever. You clock out of it. So, yeah, for that one, I'm totally going to agree. A 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I saw this probably a couple years after it came out, and I watched probably about half of it. I couldn't stand it too much or any longer. I'm thinking, oh my god, this is so boring. The only good part was in the beginning. All the action, the chariot scene, all that was fantastic, but as soon as you see them go on the quest, oh yeah, it's amazing. And then, oh, what happens? Oh, betrayal. Uh-oh. Honestly, this is terrible. I rate this one as one of even Channing Tatum's worst movies he's ever done. But I'm gonna give this actually a 2.
All right. Now that we had some bad, let's put a good taste in your mouth. This one might be a little controversial for some of you. I actually enjoy this film. Quo Vadis, 1951, starring Robert Taylor as Marcus Viserius, Peter Ustavu, as Nero, Deborah Kerr, Leo Grin, and Patricia Laffin. I gotta tell you, this movie is actually about a Roman military officer who falls in love with a Christian woman at the time when Roman paganism is dominant and Christianism is very frowned upon in the empire and persecuted. And it's a typical Romeo and Juliet kind of film, but it's done very good. There's some very interesting scenes in this movie with the gladiator fights in which they used real lions to depict some eating these dummies. I mean, it looks terrible, but it's awesome for the time. I mean, if you're watching, you're gonna go, "Oh, that was cool! That was cool!" When they tried to do that back in the day. I actually do like this film, not just because of and I'm not a big romance guy, but I actually do enjoy the romance of this film. I do enjoy the music of it as well. The acting is really, really, really something you can really get a hold of in this film and get into the characters. I mean, especially for an older film like this, it's hard to get into those kind of films. But when you see such brilliant acting as it's portrayed in this film, you really get into it. And I really recommend this movie.
Yeah, because of the acting. Again, you've nailed it. This is again one of these movies that, based in antiquity, you're hoping that the acting alone is going to be carrying it, because there's no dramatic music tones. It's just, again, like I've said before, the camera's rolling. There's two or a couple actors on the screen. Go, and you need to believe that you are the character, and you believe it. You believe it. Every scene isn't always quite good, like you said. It is the Romeo and Juliet story arc, kind of, in a way. I can kind of see that, but
it's typical for those 1960s films.
Yeah,
it's always like those Romeo and or like, oh, it's the story of where, you know, love will prevail over everything because they can't have each other because it's this weird situation. Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, them against the world type thing.
Exactly.
So, that's what I was getting at. But again, it was good. And I would give this a good 7.5, just because if you enjoy the art of acting in a film, especially in antiquity, you're going to enjoy this film.
All right. Here's another one that's actually same era too. 1961, Atlantis, the Lost Continent. This is another story of a Romeo and Juliet. Basically, it's about a fisherman in the Aegean Sea who basically finds a Atlantean princess, and he brings her back home. And in his trouble, basically, he becomes a slave. And it's the whole story of, like, there's sorcery involved and the fall of Atlantis and all those pop cultures you see of Atlantis falling when they actually talk about it. It comes from this movie. The acting is actually pretty good. The story, again, is a Romeo and Juliet kind of story. However, the props are good and bad at the same time. Because it is a mythical period piece, they don't know where to go with some of the costumes. So when they actually depict the people in Atlantis, I mean, they're like half in armor, half like male armor, chainmail, weird Hungarian helmets. I mean, it's pretty cheesy. I mean, the Greek part they get correct, but the Atlantis part is something to be desired. I mean, they're actually in a submarine too, the Atlanteans. So it's actually kind of a film ahead of its time when it's talking about Atlantis. So it's actually, I would say it's a film where we got every inspiration we have for Atlantis, how the Atlanteans live under the ocean. Well, they live in a submarine. You know, it's all their advanced technology they have and everything. But overall, I think it's a decent film. I give it a 5. Actually, no, sir. I give it a 6.
Yeah, this is this film reminds me of something like a lot of the Bruce Lee films. They are great classics because Bruce Lee's in them and they have memorable scenes. Kind of like this. There's some scenes that they're like, okay, those are cool, but yeah, you're totally right about that. Where some dude walks in chainmail, it's like, what is he doing here? Why is that even existing right now? That should not exist in this period. But I feel like this is just a fun film.
Yeah.
I had fun watching it. I didn't take it seriously because I once you start seeing some like weird stuff, like when they start going to the slaves, I was just like, okay, I'm a little out of it. But then you pay attention, like you said, about the Atlanteans, because it was one of the first films that kind of tackled that, and no one was caring about it.
Actually, in the beginning, it's almost like ancient aliens. They say, how do all these cultures coexist together? And Atlantis, and how they all like look alike and build pyramids and all that.
It's like a Twilight Zone like movie. It's kind of crazy for its time.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Here's another one that's kind of crazy for the time. Not really, but I actually really enjoy it. In fact, I would say this is probably one of the most underrated, under the radar, great films I have ever seen. Is Centurion 2010. When I picked up this movie, I went in, had no expectations, but not only did it exceed expectations, it blew me away. I mean, I have seen the typical chase 'em film, where basically, you chase the main characters to their death and it ends in a whole big caper at the end. I mean, we've seen it in Apocalypto, 10,000 BC. We see it all the time. But this one, man, the execution was good. I mean, it had some great actors in it. I mean, it had Neil Marshall, Olga Kurylenko, Michael Fassbender, Dominic West. It had Liam Cunningham, Davos, from Game of Thrones, Alexis Carolyn, Ulrich Thompson, Paul Freeman, Dave Lengo, David Morse. I mean, it had a lot of actors in this movie. Great movie. For those of you who don't know, it's about the Romans and Britain. Basically, they get ambushed by the Britons. Well, they get betrayed by a Briton who's supposed to be helping them, by a female one.
A tracker.
Yes, and basically the whole movie is them trying to get to the safety of a fort, and it is a brutal film. Little love interest, there's a little romanticism in it. But overall, action-packed, great character arcs. I mean, it makes the villains in this film you legitimately hate. I mean, you don't want to hate the Britons in this film. Oh, and they look like Britons too.
I was gonna say, when you see the armors, no, you kind of hate them.
No, yeah.
But the Bretons in this movie, when you look at them, I mean, they got the blue paint on and everything, but they are vicious. And the Romans are invading their country, but man, do you hate them? I mean, they are vicious. But Centurion, great film. I rate this movie I rate it up there. I'd rate it a good 8. I think it's a great under the radar movie.
I was watching this movie last night, and I did some back reading on this too, loosely based on the true story of what happened with the Ninth Legion, and there's so much speculation of what truly happened to them, because they were originally marked down as lost. They have no idea what happened to them, and with this, he comes up with an idea for what happens and how they're portrayed.
What you just mentioned is exactly what the movie Eagle tried to be.
Yes!
Eagle tried to be Centurion. I know that sounds funny, and Centurion was a lower budget film.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really funny because Centurion came out first, and then Eagle came out after, but it was like Eagle basically tried to be like Centurion in a really shitty way. But I don't know. I mean, it was like instead of running, we'll walk, and instead of hating the enemies, we'll love them.
Right?
But they were both essentially about the same thing. But I always tell people, man, don't watch Eagle. Just watch Centurion. It's the way better version of the story.
Oh, it was. And I loved Dominic West in this movie. He does a really great job with his role of Virus. You just felt for him. I mean, just see how he gets betrayed. Even the way he dies was brutal. I mean, he goes into this death fight with the person that betrayed him, and just seeing him at the end just gas and start getting slashed. He gets stabbed in the heart. Spoilers, everyone, but I love this movie. I give this a 9.
Yeah, I might get a little flack from you guys. I didn't have that much of an emotional attachment when watching it.
Centurion?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. I thought it was pretty good. You know what I would give this film is this might be that I was looking at all these films. It might be the greatest movie that had the best costumes. Like, the costumes were
for the Bretons,
top notch
Yeah.
for a low budget film, because you can see where the money went.
Yeah.
It didn't go into the scenes or stuff like that. It was basically they just filmed it in the woods. But the armor was like badass. The acting was pretty good. But it was just, the movie was just very one long, intense ride, and that's what you want to see.
All right. And, of course, we got to mention it. Gladiator, 2000. Now, I love this film. I actually give Gladiator 9.5 out of 10. Gladiator deserves every single respect from a historical standpoint, so from history buff standpoint, to a movie critic standpoint. It's Ridley Scott's greatest film he's ever done, even over Alien. And the music, the acting from Russell Crowe, from Joaquin Phoenix. I can't even tell you guys. If you've never seen Gladiator, you must see it. It is on the top movies you must see before you die. It's about Maximus, who's a general for the Roman army, who's a friend of Marcus Aurelius, the aging emperor, and Commodus, who's his son. And basically, Marcus Aurelius passes the Roman Empire over to Maximus instead of Commodus. Commodus murders Marcus Aurelius. It's a big revenge story. None of it is historically accurate at all. None of it is true. However, Gladiator brought back period piece films. It brought back Roman movies, Greek movies, brought back films of antiquity. Gladiator deserves every last ounce of respect it gets. Hands down, I mean, I can go through the whole cast of this movie. Every single person in it is great.
Here's my take. I'll give you that at the end, but the film obviously is exactly what you said. It brought back not just something that we hadn't seen in films, like as far as in antiquity or just in films, but the visceralness of it, if that even makes sense. The battle scenes, memorable, right? Like almost every single battle scene, by the way, every single battle scene. Not just one or two, but every single one, all the way up until the end versus Joaquin Phoenix, was memorable, right?
Not just that, Joaquin Phoenix's performance when he was young like that.
Oh, you hated it.
Oh, he was a great Commodus. My favorite scene is the whole Maximus.
Yes!
Yeah, and the whole... I mean, who cannot forget those two scenes?
Well, who can't forget anything from this?
Yeah.
This whole thing...
Are you not entertained?
Yeah, that one there too.
The thumbs up, thumbs down, everything came... The music...
Joaquin Phoenix in performance in Gladiator, it's just amazing. I mean, his whole attitude, all his monologues are so brilliant. He's a villain that you really hate him, but you hate him in a different way. He's not a villain like, you know, he's not an outright villain where he just can kill you. He's like, he controls the power of life and death over you, and it's so hard for you because you're like, oh God, it's so disgusting, because if you were in the position you are in, it would, you know, you wouldn't be here. But not only that, it's just, he's one of those villains that just, in that movie, that gets under your skin and makes you think, wow, he's scary. He's scary in a lot of subtle ways because he's the emperor, and he's, you know, insane initially. You know, from his speech of like, you know, when he's speaking to his nephew, going, "What were you doing, busy little bee?" He's like, "And the king was hurt," and he like tells that whole little story. That is scary, and in a villain aspect, you're scared when he's screaming and yelling. You are taken back, like, wow, this is a guy that he's out of his mind. You know, he's just this. He's a great villain.
Yeah, controlled rage is what it is for his film, and that's really hard for an actor to portray. It takes a lot out of an actor to be in that type of role, but like you said, just him subtly understanding. Like, a villain could be smart and outsmart, you know, the heroes and stuff like that, and pull moves, and he does that, but he does it in a way where he's like, I already know that I'm a step ahead of you, and I'm gonna show you that I'm a step ahead of you by controlling people. The whole thumbs up, thumbs down, like we said. He controls people like, here's my power, right here. Within one finger, I have this much power, and you got nothing.
But, you know, compared to all the other actors that have held those kind of imperial kind of roles, they just didn't really get it off as like a sense of entitlement, a sense of that closed rage like Joaquin Phoenix presented
Where
in.
you believe him.
Where you actually believe. Not only that, but you know, you had the whole setup from his father about how he was going to give it to Maximus and not him, and he does that whole speech about, I noticed I wasn't on your list about anything, courage, nothing. He's like, but there's more, you know, to life. There's more than being a person than courage. That, like, as a villain, you really feel for him,
that's another
but
thing.
you hate him at the same time. He's that villain. Yeah, you love, but you hate him at the same time, because you're like, I feel bad for the guy, but God, is he a terrible person.
Yes, you hit it so on the head, because right there when he's talking to his father, you feel that shred of like, I'm him, in a way, especially for a guy.
Everyone
because
can
of talking to their dad. You feel that, like, is it never enough? And then that's why he turns crazy. So it's like, is it really his fault that he's that crazy? Or really, is he that bad of a person? And that's what makes a villain, is you don't know. You don't know. And that's the whole thing about Joaquin Phoenix as that character. But here's the reason why I don't give it that high a rating, and I'm going to give it an 8. It's because I don't believe it's Ridley Scott's best film. I do believe I put Alien over that, but that's another thing.
All right.
This movie was fantastic for its time. Now we're turning into the century. This was like the movie. It won all the awards.
That's what Ridley Scott's always trying to achieve again.
Yeah. I mean, this was
That's why everything says from the guy who made Gladiator.
and that's why people trash Ridley Scott, because like after he got the awards for this film, he was never the same. But this film was good, I believe, for its time. Whether it's age is up to you guys, and I encourage you guys to rewatch it if you haven't, because I know you have all seen it. Rewatch it again. You be the judge. I'm going to give it an 8, just because there's a lot of cheesiness to this film, like super cheese. That you might like, you might not like. It depends on who you are, but I'm going to give it an 8 just because of that. The acting's solid. Everything else is okay, but I feel like there are better period pieces out there.
I love this movie so much too. Honestly, this is a 10 out of 10. This is my favorite Ridley Scott movie that he's put out there. But the two people that I love so much in this movie is Oliver Reed and the late great Richard Harris, who played Proximo and Marcus Aurelius. Their roles, how the way they portrayed them was so amazing. And that's what I'm always remembering, is their quotes. I love this movie so much. I recommend it to everybody.
All right. And here's actually one I'm going to mention because, one, it's very unknown, but since we mentioned Gladiator, I really want to mention it because you might hear some similarities in this film. The Fall of the Roman Empire, 1964. This is actually the story of the aging Marcus Aurelius, who intends to hand the empire over to a general, even though that did not happen historically. It is almost the same trope as Gladiator. And it is actually but of course he doesn't die. But it's actually about the story of the Germanic Wars and everything, and basically the end of the golden era of Roman history. It's a very unique film. I've seen it personally. I highly recommend it. It is a little boring, but I'm going to personally give this movie I'm going to give it actually a 5.9.
I've seen this movie too. I honestly, the most part about this is I love the cast. Sophia Loren, Christopher Plummer, James Mason, Omar Sharif. They did fantastic jobs with the roles. With this movie, I give it a 6.5.
Yeah, again, I would give it also a 6.5. It's pretty good. It's a solid film. For its time.
And we'll be right back on the Real Sharks Podcast.
Do you or someone you know struggle through life with anxiety-related mental disorders? Ever get that feeling that you are one of the few? I'm here to tell you that you are not alone. Take a journey with me as I talk about key points in my past and how they may have led to me being diagnosed with anxiety and panic disorder. After which, we will talk about different ways to tone down the anxiety and maybe even beat it together on anxiety. The easiest way to remember the name is by thinking about how one searches for a state of zen in the midst of the anxieties of life. My name is Gerald, and I'm the host of Anxiety.
And welcome back to Real Sharks, all my listeners. Alright, and here's of course another classic that we gotta get to, which is 1960's Spartacus, starring Kirk Douglas, Peter Ustinov as Ludus Bionis, and actually you remember him, he was actually in Quo Vadis. Gene Simmons, Lawrence Oliver, Tony Curtis, Charles Laughton, John Gavin. Great film. I don't know anyone who doesn't love this movie. I think it's a great film. Of course, it's very, very historically inaccurate. Steve said it a lot. It's very silly, very over the top for the time. I think it's a film that is starting not to age well, but I still think it's a classic. It's a movie that deserves to be respected. I love it. I think it's good. I think it's personally better than that show. I know some people are going to freak out over that, but I like older films better. I like Spartacus. I think it's a good movie. Spartacus, of course, is a story of the slave who rises up against Rome, slave who became a gladiator, rises up against Rome, leads a rebellion, fights Rome to his very end. a movie, too, that does not have a happy ending. That actually stays true to the real story of Spartacus. But I'm going to give Spartacus an 8.
You know, I mean, I love this movie. I mean, what can you say? Kurt Douglas. I mean, one of his iconic roles in this movie.
His most iconic.
Yeah, his most iconic role that he's put out there. I mean, when I saw this movie, it actually made me a true fan of Kurt Douglas, and made me go back and watch some of his other movies that he did. You know, as a gladiator movie, this is like in the top 5. Like Gladiator, Spartacus, they're right, almost side by side. I mean, how Rob said it's highly inaccurate, you still love it for how it is. And you know, I have to agree with you with this ranking an 8.
Yeah, I give it a high 8.5 because it changed films. This is the 1960s, guys. Like, the audience was not ready for this. They were listening to like doo-wop still at that time, you know, listening to Elvis. They weren't really ready for something like this. Even though it's cheesy for us right now, you got to think about how it was for that time. This was as big as Gladiator was for 2000. So does Spartacus for 1960, and I give it an 8.5.
All right, and Movies of Antiquity would not be complete if we didn't mention Julius Caesar, and I've seen them all, and I'm just going to tell you the best ones right now.
I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him.
And I'm going to rate them for you right here, and you guys can go ahead with me. All right, the 1950s Julius Caesar. I'm going to give that one a 9 out of 10. The black and white one, amazing. David Bradley. Charlton Heston is Mark Antony in one of the best Mark Antony speech overall.
The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often turred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar.
Harold Tasker as Julius Caesar. Excellent Julius Caesar. Bob Holt. John O'Leary. I mean, great cast. The Julius Caesar from 1979. Also amazing. However, I'm going to give it an 8.5 because it's a little slower. The props are a little cheesier. It kind of cut back on the whole being authentic with Rome. And, you know, there was Charles Gray, who was Julius Caesar as well. He was excellent. Richard Pascoe was good in it. Keith Mitchell. I mean, Elizabeth Spriggs was in it. Virginia McKenna. They were all good in it. But, you know, the 1970s one, like I said, it's just not as... I just think there's more to be desired in it. And then Julius Caesar 2002, which is a drama history movie. And that one actually has Christopher Walken in it. It has Richard Harris again in it. Samuel Sardeo, Pamela Bowen, Jeremy Cicito. It's actually a pretty good movie. It's actually portrays Julius Caesar more in the Gaul campaign. So you actually see a little bit more intensity in relationship with him and his men. I think, though, overall, Jeremy Sisto did a really good job as Julius Caesar, actually. Not the best Julius Caesar, but he did a great job. I mean, what would you guys rate? I mean, out of all the ones I've said, what do you guys think is the best Julius Caesar film? Those are the top ones. I'm sorry, those are the top. And this is excluding Rome, the show. This is movies. We're not doing the TV show.
Yeah, not doing the mini-series or the little TV shows that they've done.
Yeah.
You know, the first one that you mentioned, Mungin, I've seen that one. I saw that one in high school. I love that one. It's fantastic in black and white. If you ever want to watch a Julius Caesar movie, I highly suggest that one. Out of the others, I really haven't seen them, so the first one, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, mine would be probably a tie between Julius Caesar and Cleopatra and the 1953 film Julius Caesar, but I might give the nod to that one. Both of them, I'm gonna give an 8.5 and an 8.7.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually brought up Cleopatra from 1963. Iconic movie. I think it's great, though. It's, you know, a bunch of white people playing Egyptians. But you had, of course, Elizabeth Taylor, the beautiful Elizabeth Taylor as Cleopatra. Richard Burton as Mark Antony. Rex Harrison as Julius Caesar. I mean, he was awesome, Julius Caesar, too. Yeah. But yes, Cleopatra is one of the best. I'd actually say Cleopatra should go up there. I'd give it a 7.5. Not historically accurate to anything. There's actually little spots of historical accuracy, but overall, it's a good film.
Yeah, but this is another one of these films, just like Spartacus, that actually brung Hollywood into the next generation. It actually brung it out of the blacklists that happened in the late 1940s, where people were rebelling against the natures of what movies were doing, showing a lot of skin. Like Elizabeth Taylor, as her role as Cleopatra, is so iconic that it's been just done how many times? It's ridiculous.
And speaking of which, another Egyptian movie, since we're on Egypt. Land of the Pharaohs, 1955. For those of you who haven't seen it, many people haven't. It's kind of a small kind of picture. I don't really recommend it, but it's about a pharaoh who's basically obsessed with this tomb, and his woman basically, who's basically a scandalous woman. She's like, I ain't gonna let you take none of your stuff into the afterlife. And that's all I'm gonna say about it. But that's basically that movie. I know it's a short review, but hey, that's the film in a nutshell. And it really is. It's really about a girl who will not let the pharaoh go to the afterlife with his stuff. I'm not even joking. But I think it's an interesting film. It deserves a mention. Another film that deserves a mention is Agora, 2009. And this movie has Rachel Weisz in it, Max Mahal, Oscar Isaac, Rupert Evans in it, Ashraf Bahorn. I think this is a good movie. It's about the story of the Roman occupation of Alexandria, and basically the Roman withdrawal from Egypt, and the library. Basically, all the knowledge in the ancient world was located in Alexandria, right in Egypt. And this is a story about basically Rachel Weisz trying to protect all that information. It's a really, really good movie, actually. Very under the radar. I give this film I give it a good 7.
I've actually seen this movie too, and I love it. It's up there with me. I definitely loved Rachel Weisz in this role, and what really got me really into it too is the whole entire kind of battle between Christians and pagans and everything to go with that. I thought it went historically right with that too. It was perfect. 7.5 as well.
And we couldn't get away without mentioning Luke's favorite movie, Hercules. Well, actually, it's nice, but he actually likes the show, but we're not mentioning shows. We're actually mentioning just movies. But yeah, the Hercules movie with The Rock, I mean, it was okay. I didn't really like the way they portrayed this idea of Hercules being more of a PR kind of thing, like just a word of mouth, not really not the demigod we all know. And again, I don't know why movies can never do the actual story of Hercules, the Pillars of Hercules. It's so much better of a story than making up just some crap. But I have to give a mention to that movie. Just real, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, Hercules. Here's another mention for you. Some people here are going to be like, what? And hey, I actually want to bring it up because I think it's funny, and it's one of the better movies of the story. Oh, brother, where are thou? Because it's actually the story of the Odyssey, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But yeah, if you ever want to see a good, nice retelling of the Odyssey, go watch Oh, Brother, Where Are Thou? Starring George Clooney. Good film. But yeah, the Odyssey. There's a made TV movie. That's all I'm going to say. Good story, but there needs to actually be a real movie about it. All right, and of course we have to mention
This is Sparta!
300, baby. We gotta mention 300, of course. 2006 with Gerard Butler, Lena Headey, Rodrigo Santoro, Michael Fassbender, David Wyam, Dominic West. I mean, I go on. Peter Masai, Andrew Time. I go on and on with this movie. Great cast, great movie. Gets a lot of hate for no reason, but the special effects blew you away when it came out. I don't care what anyone says. Awesome movie. It's a Frank Miller novel brought to life by Zack Snyder himself, one of the best directors. I mean, I can't say too much about 300 besides it's excellent. I give it actually an 8.5, and many people are like, whoa! But no, it is an excellent film. Tells you the story of Thermopylae from a Greek perspective. There are some historical accuracies in the film, but it's just blown up as if a Greek was telling you the movie.
It's an epic.
I mean, it's an epic. It's great, though. I love 300. Epic film.
Yep. Another one that actually brung back the movies about antiquity. This one was crazy, and it did it in a way that was like a comic book style that a lot of people perceived as good. It was great. I give this an 8.5 is a solid score for this film.
And there's another film called 300 Spartans. It's okay. You can find it on YouTube. Go ahead and watch it. It's all right. Cool. I'm gonna give it a mention.
Yeah, I love this movie. I mean, I definitely agree. It brought back antiquity movies. I mean, what else can you say about this movie? I mean, Gerard Butler. I mean, you felt for everything that you saw in the movie. I love it. Actually, I give this one a 9 though.
And real quick mention too. I want to mention while we're also bringing up 300: Rise of an Empire. Ugh, God, let me tell you, I don't know why they made 300 and they went and did this movie. I mean, probably starring Eva Green, Sullivan Steplin, Lena Headey, Cersei, Rodrigo Santoro in it, Jack O'Connell, Colin Mulvey. I gotta tell you, one of the most awkward lovemaking scenes ever done in a movie, borderline on rape, most like watching a sex scene with your parents, basically, in a movie theater. Absolutely horrendous and terrible. Or, I mean, terrible sequel, terrible prequel, whatever you want to call, whatever the hell that movie was supposed to be. Although it did tell, it was actually, in all seriousness, to be honest, it was supposed to tell the other half of the story of Thermopylae, which is Themistocles, which is actually the guy who came up with the whole plan, actually, to defeat the Persians. Yeah. But that's a whole other story for another time.
Yeah, this is a weird film. If you like 300 and you want to give this a shot just as a tag-along, go ahead. Don't doesn't make sense, but I would say give it a go if you want to. It's worth one shot.
Yeah, I remember when I saw it, I mean, I hated it. It's highly inaccurate. I mean, yes, they got some parts right, but other than that, it was
nothing like the novel.
I think we saw that together, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And here's another one I wanted to mention, is Hannibal, 1959. This is another underrated movie of antiquity, starring Victor Mature as Hannibal, Bud Spencer, Terence Hill, Rita Gam, Millie Vitale. Hannibal, actually, it's the story of Hannibal Barca and the invasion of Rome. Classic film, only, in that period piece as they can do, back in the 1950s, right about to hit the 60s, so came before some of the other ones, like Spartacus and stuff, but it was actually pretty good. They actually have elephants in it attacking Romans, so kind of actually factually correct to the actual Hannibal story. Most of the story is them traveling through the Alps. Hannibal's pretty cool, though. I think it's actually a pretty good underrated movie of antiquity. Here's another movie that I have to mention, and it is a movie that is very hated across the board. I personally love it, though. Starring Anthony Hopkins, 1999's Titus. And this is a Shakespearean play. I enjoy it quite a bit, but it has Anthony Hopkins, Jessica Lange, Alan Cumming in it, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, Harry Lennox, Angus McFadden, Matthew Rhys in it. I love it. It's actually a really good, O'Sheen Jones. I really, really like this film. It's a good play, but it's different. It's like a Roman period piece with modern tropes in it. And it's the story of Othello. And it's good. I think it's good. I think the music's good. However, I do see the criticism from people when they watch it, because it is hard to follow. There are parts where you're like, man, what is going on? And there are parts where you're like, whoa, what is this? What movie am I watching again? But Titus is a good movie in itself. I actually think it's great.
Yeah, how great were those scenes? Memorable. This is one of the greater, really underrated Anthony Hopkins films. If you haven't seen it, go see it. You might have missed it because it was around the time The Matrix came out in 1999, so people were going to see that. And I think that's why this film got undershadowed first time. Go watch it. Again, yeah, like you said, it's very weird. There's scenes that don't mesh well, and I don't know if that was because it was production issues or what have you, some directorial mishaps, but this is it's a pretty solid film for what it is, what it's going for.
And here's one I think too that goes under the radar. Another personal, I like it. I know it gets a lot of hate. I know Steve doesn't like it either, because even though I don't know why, because earlier in the show he just mentioned how the depiction of the gods is something Hollywood doesn't do anymore. But I think this movie captured it very well. Not to mention special effects, cinematography. It actually had Superman in it. The Henry Cavill, and that's Immortals, 2011. I enjoyed this film. I think it's good. I don't know why people hate on it so much, but not just Henry Cavill's in it. You got Frida Pinto in it, Luke Evans, Mickey Rourke is in it. Isabel Lucas, Joseph Morgan, Stephen Dorff, Kellen Lutz, John Hurt's in it. I think it's a great film. I mean, it's not the best movie of antiquity, but it definitely tried to bring back that old, nostalgic Greek telling, such as Jason and the Argonauts, such as Clash of the Titans, in a modern era. I always told people, if you like those old kind of Greek films, you'll like Immortals. It's just basically those films in the modern era. If they had the technology to make Jason and the Argonauts back then, this is how it would have looked. That's my opinion, but I think Immortals gets way too much flack.
It gets the flack because it doesn't look good. It's not a good film that doesn't look good at all. It's, like the action scenes were just kind of cheesy to me. They were just like,
nah. It was coming off of 300.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And it was from the producer that Zack Snyder actually produced the film, which was like that was the whole big thing about it. Like from the producer of Zack Snyder, here comes Immortal. So everyone's like, oh, we gotta go see this, and they were like doing the same film, but they wanted to be their own film, and they were kind of at that crossroads. So the action scenes were just so weird and wonky. The acting is subjective. I'm not gonna say whether it was good or bad because it's all subjective at the end of the day. I hate it because of that. Yeah, I did say like the depictions of the gods. That's a great thing that they should do, but I don't know. It was just a little weird. It was wonky filmed.
I have to agree with you. I mean, it's okay movie. I mean, the only part that I really liked is how you were saying that what you liked the most is how they are doing the parts of telling the gods. That part I really liked. Story wise, I wasn't much of a fan of it.
I think you guys just don't know a good movie of antiquity like Rob does.
I mean, it's okay. I mean, if you got the time to spare and you're wanting to watch it, I say watch it. I mean, open a beer.
Yeah, definitely in the mood for like fighting as well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good fighting in there. I definitely like that. But like I said, the story-wise, no.
I think we've hit all the big ones. And do you guys have anything else you want to say about any of the movies of antiquity?
This is again another one of these film genres that don't exist in modern films right now. This is why we're doing it, because go watch it. If you're like stagnant about, man, there's nothing good coming out, go watch a movie about antiquity. It's going to challenge your perception of movies.
Alright, all my listeners, make sure to listen, like, and subscribe, because we'll be catching a spear in our mouth from 20,000 leagues under the sea. This has been Real Sharks!